My name is Marilee Burnett. I am your astrologer, back with the messages for the week of January 6, 2025. Yes, this is it, the first full week of the new year. And this is the first week where we start to see the major shifts that are occurring. So if you have been following me, you maybe have gone out and watched my preview for all of 2025, which is a free masterclass that I did. And if not, make sure you click on that subscribe button. That way you are notified every time I do create new free content for you. And of course, now you'll go back to my website, look for that 2025 overview, and hear about all the amazing changes that are ahead for us, and unlike any we've ever had in our lifetime. And it has been almost thousands of years, literally, since we've seen anything like we are going to see this year. So as you might imagine, this is going to be a really monumental year, and you'll want to be prepared where all these shifts and changes will be happening for you and your sign. So we'll talk about the first one as we get into the week further along, but we of course will get started with Monday. Now, if you want to follow along with the written content, make sure you go out to my website, marileeburnett.com, and join me there. That way you're emailed all of the articles that I create, which every month I do a full monthly horoscope with all the daily predictions. I do a new moon and a full moon article, and I break down by sign what you might expect or what you should be working on as a result of the energy of that lunar event. So make sure you join me there as well. And of course, then you're notified of all of my special offers. And I do have a great one on the 2025 breakdown, which is a 2-hour session, which is a lot. And trust me, your mind will be blown by the time we're done with it. But it can be recorded, and you also get a workbook and a worksheet that goes along with it that you can continue to reference back to through the entire year ahead. So hopefully I'll see some more of you. I love doing those sessions, but they're definitely intense. All right. So with that, as usual, we're using the Astro Gold software. This is giving you a really nice view. And we talk about mostly the bold contacts, and that is the energy that we're feeling most in the moment. You can, of course, listen to last week's to get an idea of what we talked about and what's still happening that started last week, but it's carrying on to this week as well, which is a lot to do with Pluto and the nodes, and Mars and the nodes, and the conflict between Pluto and Mars. But now, as we kick off on Monday, we are going to see that Mars, in its retrograde, has now left the sign of Leo, which it prefers, and now it's back into Cancer, where I always like to say Mars is like a spoiled child in Cancer, because it's not a planet that's concerned so much with feeling and emotions and caring for other people, right? Mars is a warrior. It doesn't have or appreciate emotions because it has to do things that are really difficult. And if it has to stop and feel and make decisions based on emotions versus the heart of a warrior, it's much more difficult, and we feel the difficulty. Varsi talked about how Mars in Cancer feels, especially retrograde, like you're walking through mud, right? Everything is so slow and it's so difficult, and emotions are over the top. It's super dramatic, and we have to deal with this drama until at least February 23rd, which is when Mars will slow down and station and then start moving direct, which at least is better. But then we still have several weeks as it makes its way back from the 17 degrees of Cancer until it can clear it. So this, anytime Mars goes retrograde, it's a lot of work, especially in the water signs. So just know, whatever you saw when Mars first went through this area, now we're seeing it for the second time. So there's something more we need to understand from October, November, when Mars was first going through here. And so we need to slow down and take a closer look. We need to get more in touch with our feelings and our intuition. Now, we're also still having the tension and the conflict with Pluto, but it's shifted now because Mars is no longer in Leo, in the opposite sign of Aquarius. It's stepped off a bit and moved into the sign of Cancer. So there's still confrontation, but instead of being so explosive, the confrontations can be more emotional in nature. So that is how we start. And then we're also going to see at this time the beginning of the build up to the energy that is supportive between Neptune and Mars. So we'll be talking about that more as these get closer and closer together. But another difficult piece of energy that we're going to talk about shows up tomorrow. And it's late in the day tomorrow. So let's move to Tuesday. On Tuesday, you can see the energy in the sky is really lit up. So now we have two planets at 29 degrees. 29 is a critical degree. It's a crisis point. I like to call it a test, a major test. So this is your exam. The degrees go from 0 to 29. 29 being the ending or the beginning if you're something like a node that moves retrograde, and we'll be talking about that this week as well. And then we have Mercury, thank heavens, after a very long retrograde in a sign where Mercury is at its fall, Sagittarius, is about to be over. But before it leaves, it has one more thing to teach us. And how it teaches us is going to be weird, uncomfortable, odd, because it is making this strange connection to Mars in Cancer. These two signs they don't quite see eye to eye. And Mars and Mercury don't see eye to eye either, right? Mercury's a little smart aleck and thinks he's funny. And Mars doesn't have time for nonsense. So there's something odd and strange and yet critical to a choice we have to make today. And of course, Mercury rules the mind. It rules communication. Sagittarius can rule over foreign people, foreign countries, higher education. Cancer is home and family. So there's just something very interesting about Tuesday that we need to pay attention to. We'll also see the moon that moves into a sign that it favors, which is Taurus. But as it does that, and it sits at 0 degrees, it is speaking again at that weird angle to the South Node in Libra. And keep in mind, the South Node is only here. The North Node is only in Aries until the 11th when they're going to shift. So we have to be paying attention. 0 is like that reset moment, right? This is a chance to figure it all out as the nodes are about to shift. So it's been 18 months that we've been learning the lessons of what the North Node in Aries means, which is sticking up for what we want and for ourselves, setting good, healthy boundaries, and South Node in Libra, letting go of those relationships that are toxic and unhealthy. Again, having to get out of relationships where we're unable to keep good, healthy boundaries, and learning how to remain strong and independent while we're in relationship, right? So that's Libra. And that's just one of the many concepts about Aries and Libra. Libra is also law and justice. There's so many things, but whatever you have needed to learn, the work of the last 18 months is coming to an end. This is your last week. This is it. Prove to the universe that you have learned the lesson, that you have done the work, and you're ready to move on. That's your goal this week, to finish up the work, whatever houses you have these transiting through. Some will stay, but the lesson will change because the energy is shifting based on the house system that you use. I use Placidus, so that means I still have the North Node going through maybe my seventh house is just going to change the influence from the perspective of Pisces versus Aries. Well, we'll talk more on that in a few minutes. All right, so Mercury ends its time. It's in conjunct to Mars. I also always recommend you're extremely careful on this day because this is a perfect recipe for accidents. Both of these planets have to do with movement. Mars is already difficult as far as movement goes when it's going backwards. Mercury is fired up at 29 degrees of Sagittarius. So just be extra careful whether you're driving or flying or just walking or playing sports. Just be careful on Tuesday so that you don't end up getting in some kind of an injury. All right. And then immediately as Mercury moves on Wednesday, it is going to be in a T-square to the north and south node. So Mercury in the sign of Capricorn. This is maybe somebody youthful in a government role that has to change or give up their role, or this is somebody who's speaking out against the government, and they are young, right? Mercury's young, youthful energy. And the nodes, of course, are our fate and our destiny and our karma. So there's some difficult event that is happening on Wednesday the 8th, and it could happen as early as Tuesday evening, at least here from the West Coast perspective, because that is as soon as Mercury will actually move into the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn's a much more serious sign, of course, for Mercury to move through. It's not fun and exciting like Sagittarius. It's cold and restrictive and serious and hard work. So if you work and you need to pay attention to the details, which most of us do, but it's not creative, I guess is what I'm trying to describe that as. It may be in finance, for instance. Then Mercury going through there is helpful for the next 3 weeks. But there's something about how you work or how you pay attention to the details or how you use the details in the work that you do that might need to make a significant change. And maybe your work itself has to change because of this square. A square and a T-square in particular is created by the tension between the two opposing signs, which of course here is the north node and the south node, and then that third sign, and they're all at 0, right? So this is something brand new that is being brought to our attention, and we have to make a change. Okay? So we're going to see something that maybe we would never have expected to see as soon as Tuesday or Wednesday. So keep in mind, wherever this is happening in your own chart, if you're feeling pressure to do something different, do it, right? Don't try to hang on to something just because it's what you've always known how to do. This is a chance to explore something new and different and make significant changes, right? Again, this is the last time for the next 19 years you will see Mercury squaring the nodes in this way. So it matters. It's something of significant consequence. And especially if you have planets at 0 degrees in your natal chart, even those that you have between that 27 and 29 degree, 0 to 2. I like to keep the orbs pretty tight. Just pay attention. Might be a great time to start journaling for the next 3 weeks in order to capture all of these new ideas that are coming in. Okay, that is one of the pieces that's going on Wednesday. The second one, and this will go on for a couple of days, is the sun, also in Capricorn, squaring with Chiron. So Chiron can be wounds. It can be somebody who ends up being wounded. It could be somebody who falls ill. And as a result of this illness, something about their job or their role will change. And it's difficult change, right? Because this is a square. Squares are uncomfortable energy that hit up against one another and require the two energies to either ignore this tension, which is almost impossible, especially with the sun, right? The sun is the source of all. In Capricorn, it's a successful leader that's coming up against this big challenge that actually just, it can't be ignored. So there is something important here. It's also an activation of the eclipse point from April of 2024. So this could be a big, again, a shock of somebody in a leadership role that is suddenly taken ill, and the course of something that we thought was all going to happen a particular way changes, like overnight. So we're going to see this. So first we had Mercury and this T-square, and there's pressure, and then we have the sun up against Chiron. More pressure and more things that have to change. So like I said, this is a week where the shifts and the changes that are going to define 2025 are just beginning to show up. All right. So as I mentioned, the same energy will be available to us on Thursday, but it's starting to move on because the sun is starting to weaken as far as its conflict goes with Chiron. But of course, it's still there. It's still available. We'll still see whatever the repercussions are from this conflict. And think about it in your own life. Whenever you see a square, this 90-degree angle, this pressure that you're feeling, especially again, if you have any planets in that 19-degree, 17 to let's say 21, right? Those planets are feeling this pressure in some way. And so that may be where you realize you have to make a change, right? This is not something you can just keep doing the way you've always been doing it. And the sun shines the light on what we need to see and what we need to change and what we need to heal. That's what Chiron does. It shows and exposes our wounds so that we'll work on them and heal them and take our power back from them. And then when we've taken our power back, what once was a wound suddenly becomes our strength because we've overcome it. We've conquered it. Chiron, the trainer of the gods, right? It's training us. We have to do the work, but when we do, we have a superpower. Trust your intuition on this day. We're going to see the moon move into the sign of Gemini. As it does, it is speaking in harmony with Pluto in Aquarius, and then they're both speaking in harmony with the South Node. So this is, again, the last bits of lessons about transformation, right? And being of service, connecting with other people, communicating our feelings. There's something, again, as a result of whatever we learn, whatever we see, whatever has to change, that may open a portal of communication with other people that you thought was closed forever, and suddenly it's not. So just, lean into trusting the downloads and the messages that come through. Again, another important day for journaling, because there's something about this day that's going to stick with us, and we just want to make sure we don't miss any of the messages. All right, so speaking of that, still going to see, Pluto's starting to wrap up. It's time where it's most heavily influenced by the nodes because they're getting ready to change signs. They'll start to separate more. And then we're going to see that moon still in Gemini have that conversation with Jupiter. And so again, Jupiter is a great teacher, and there can be an important lesson, again, that we need to learn. And it can show up in a really big way. Now, keep in mind, Jupiter will start to slow down, and it is the first part of February where it'll station to go direct. So again, anytime a planet's slowing down or stationing, the energy picks up. And as it does, we start to feel the influence of it even more. So just, again, tune in and start paying attention to the last bits of lessons that, each of these planets and their placements that began in 2024 have for you, right? There's things that you're going to have to finish in 2025 that we started in 2024. But you're still going to get a sneak peek of what 2025 has in store for you too. So you're doing a bit of double duty, which makes sense because this is a 9-year, 2025. When you add the 2, 2, and the 5 together, that creates a 9. And that means from a numerological, say that word quickly, perspective, we're in for a lot of endings. Things come to a close with the number 9. Think about even the loop. The number 9 comes to a close at the top, right? So we've reached the top of something and we're closing, finishing, concluding, and then next year we'll bring in the 1 year where we can start something new. So things have to end. You'll be motivated to end them based on what you're seeing coming for you, but you'll still have to go back and do the hard work and finish things up and tie up those loose ends. So we're starting to feel those shifts right now as the nodes get to the end of their work. And when does that happen specifically? Here we go. Dun, da, da, da. This has been hard work, I would say, over the last 18 months. Whenever we have to work on ourselves with the Aries energy, it's hard. And especially when, we have to stand up for ourselves and choose ourselves over our partners, over our friends, over what everybody else wants for us. And we have to be confident and secure enough to choose us, right? This is very much me energy versus the we energy of Libra, which is what we were letting go, what we were moving away from. And we saw lots of big relationships, of course, of famous people, because that's who we know, breaking up and dissolving, and businesses dissolving, and all those partnerships that were no longer viable, right, had to be dissolved. So we're at the end of that work. And hopefully you learned the lessons, because this now is starting a new 19-year cycle. And so you hopefully don't carry with you the same thing for the next 19 years because you just decided not to show up and do the work. Because that really sucks. So now, here you go. Here's a new 19-year cycle that involves the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. And again, any of you with planets at 29 degrees are going to notice this more because you have a personal lesson that is kicking off now. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, 29 is a critical degree. This is the pre-exam, right? So normally I'm saying we're at 29, we've done all the work. So this is that pre-test you get that says, how much do you know about what we're going to study over the next 18 months? I'm going to test you over these next several weeks as the nodes sit here at 29 degrees to just find out what you know, what you're prepared to learn. And you can think back to 2006, the summer of 2006 was the last time that the nodes shifted in this formation. Now, halfway through this cycle, the nodes were in the opposite placement. So every about 9 years, the North Node was in Virgo and the South Node was in Pisces. So we're talking about 2015. So now we're back to North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo, like it was in 2006. So you can ask yourself, from the middle of 2006 until the beginning of 2008, what were you working on? One of the things we were working on in this country was a housing crisis. Now, there were other things at play, such as Pluto being in Capricorn at that time as well, causing a huge transformation of the financial industry. But it's just something to keep in mind. And that was one of the things that we were working through. But Pisces energy, it's also aligned with ending. So like that number 9 for the 9 year, because it's the last sign of the zodiac, right? So this is the ending of things that we're working on. It's a very spiritual sign. We think about this as psychic energy of the, connecting to spirit and the beyond, because it's all things that are hidden from us. We don't see everything here, but we know it exists. This is also where you can have hidden enemies. You can get hidden and trapped and stuck, like in a hospital or a prison. So there's all kinds of different things, of course, associated with Pisces, but it's also dreamy. It's ruled by Neptune, so we have to be careful of being delusional. We have to be careful if we drink or do drugs, because we're going to have lessons associated with that. We have to focus on our mental health. This is a sign that rules the subconscious mind because, of course, it's hidden. We know things are happening at the subconscious level, but we aren't necessarily in touch with them. So all kinds of things will test us, and it will test our faith, and it might even test us physically, right? This is originally, it was 2006 when the H1N1, the bird flu, was affecting us. So will it affect us even more over this next year and a half? So there's, of course, we're hearing it already, so it's not a complete surprise, but how big will it get? And then we look at Virgo, and Virgo is, again, both of these have to do with health. In fact, Virgo rules the sixth house, which is our health. It's our work. It's our day-to-day activities. And it's very like OCD in nature because there's so many details. The Virgos of the universe unite when anything's going on with Virgo energy, because it's like, yay, people get us, right? Love all the attention to the details and all the lists. But it's also about healing. And where I think about Pisces being, a hospital, doctors, nurses, real medical healing. When you think about Virgo, it's more earthy and natural, and using natural elements to help you heal versus the direct medicinal healing that can be Piscean in nature. So just a few things. I have a couple of articles out there where you can connect to and read more in depth, and hypnosis sessions to, especially with Virgo, to help along your healing journey, to do a nice cleanse. So go check those out. Of course, the links are on my YouTube channel and on my website as well. And I think you'll find those really, really helpful. So it's new, it's a change. And as this change happens, the ruler of Pisces, which is Neptune today, but originally the ruler of Pisces before Neptune was identified was Jupiter. So they're both influencers, right? And Neptune is in alignment with all those things that are hidden and beneath the surface, right? It's also the sign that has a lot to do with artists and music, art. So I would imagine over the next year and a half, we'll see a lot of maybe influencers, musicians, actors that are tested in some way and challenged. And when they're on their path, right, they will go big. So that is something to look forward to. So Neptune today, as the ruler over this North Node energy and of these lessons, is speaking in harmony with Mars. So there is this surge of energy and support to your gifts, to your intuition, to your feelings. So again, I think this really highlights whatever this lesson is about for you over the next year and a half. Pay attention to today, in particular, as this shift happens, because there's literally an important lesson. Where are you meant to be headed, and where do you have to move away from to get there? That's what this Virgo energy that is grounded, right? And earthy and secure and controlling. Has to let up the control and have faith in order to pursue the North Node goals. So our little OCD nature, where we like to control every little detail, Virgos, we have to stop doing that for the next year and a half and have more faith and get more in the flow. And again, stop trying to control outcomes, stop trying to be perfect, and instead just be. So lots more to talk about as we move through all of this for the next year and a half. But this area of our charts in our life is going to be hit so many times, especially this 29 and these 0 degrees, because of all the activity coming through here. The North Node, Neptune, we'll have Venus, and we will also see Mercury all come through here, and Saturn. And then Saturn and Neptune are going to conjunct in the sign of Aries. So these few degrees and everything that's been coming up while we've had these degrees be active over this last month in particular, watch how all of the things that have been happening, especially in the spring and especially with the eclipse, are going to come up for review again. So we don't know the full story to anything that's been going on in the last few weeks, but it will be exposed and we will see it through February and March. Mark my words. Click this little part of the video and come back and see. I'm sure I'll tell you, but just so you know, there is things going on beneath the surface that we have yet to fully uncover, but in time we will. All right, so on Saturday, of course, as we talk about the nodes changing signs, I'm just going to run through this really quickly to give you an idea of the houses in general that are going to be having the work. Now, if you're Aries and Libra, we're talking about the 12th and the 6th house. So all the things that I just was talking about is Pisces and Virgo houses, the 12th and 6th. So all those things, Aries, this is your 12th house. So you're working on all the things that are hidden and unseen. And then you Libras are working on the 6th house, health, work, day-to-day activities, and learning how to balance the two, right? Balance your mental health with your physical health and understand how the two are really closely aligned. Then we have Taurus and Scorpio. So this is the 11th house and the 5th house. So Taurus, this is your 11th house of friends and networking groups that you are having the lessons. And for you, Scorpio, in your 5th house, it's about romance and things that speak to your heart. And again, how do I balance what I want, me energy, 5th house, with what all of my friends want, 11th house, right? How do I balance the two so that I still feel like I am my own person and I don't get lost in the crowd? So that's the energy going on for Taurus and Scorpio. Then we have Gemini, and Gemini with Sagittarius, of course. So Gemini, the North Node, will be going through your 10th house. So this is about lessons involving your career, your status, your reputation, right? How do you use your gifts, your communication skills to help grow yourself in your career? And then Sagittarius, there's a need for a little less travel over the next year and a half and to focus more at home, right? So the balance between home and family and career and success, that's what's going on with the Geminis and the Sagittarius. And how do I balance both? So Sagittarius, yes, you can travel, but you either do it with your family or you make sure you have your family support. And Gemini, maybe you're going to start traveling for business instead of getting to just work at home, right? Whatever the storyline is, you're trying to balance those two areas. And then we have Cancers and Capricorn, right? So this is the 9th and the 3rd house. So Cancer, this is about growing and expanding in your faith, maybe growing and expanding in your knowledge. And Capricorns, you're focused on things closer to home, things that have to deal with the details in your community. Maybe it has something to do with your extended family. So you're not about the big picture this year. You're keeping things close to home. And Cancer, you love to be close to home, but you've got to expand your horizons this year and a half. Then we have Leo and we have Aquarius, and these are the 8th house and the 2nd house. So this is about finances and self-worth. This is about rebirth and transformation. This Leo is your 8th house. So you're really going through a time where big changes are needed and necessary. And then for you Aquariuses, this is the 2nd house. This is about your income and the money that you make. So you could have some big changes as far as the work that you do and the way that you make money. And it's that dynamic between the money you make and the money your partner makes. The money you make and the money you get in other ways, like loans, inheritances, and maybe investors. So there's this balance that's needed. You still have to contribute. You can't rely on somebody else all the time. And they can't always just help you. You have to do things for yourself, right? So it's, again, kind of a me-we energy. Then we have Virgo and Pisces, of course. So Pisces, this is your 1st house. So ask your Aries buddies what the work was like for the last year and a half, because they might have some advice for you. Again, when the North Node goes through our own signs or the South Node, the personal journey is felt much more strongly. So Virgos, this is your 7th house of serious relationships, business partnerships. There's big changes that are needed in that area of your life, and those are things that you have to let go of. Now, if you are, of course, the Virgo, the South Node is in your 1st house, and it's the North Node that's in your 7th house. But the 7th house is what you're leaning towards, where you need to grow. So it's less about you this year and more about other people. And then Pisces, your lesson is opposite, right? It's more about others, because the South Node is letting go in the 7th house of relationships that don't serve you. And the North Node in your 1st house has you focusing on yourself, your goals, your spirituality, your gifts, right? Okay, so that's a quick rundown of how these nodal shifts might affect you. And then as we move on to Sunday, we're going to see some, let's call it a happy surprise, because that sun energy in the sign of Capricorn is now speaking in harmony with Uranus, which is still retrograde, and it will be for a couple of more weeks. I believe it's the 30th when it'll finally station to go direct. So there is, again, a happy surprise, sudden shocks, but it's a trine. So there's something helpful for you during this time that shows up, again, unexpectedly, and it can pass you by, or if you're smart, you'll take advantage of it and do something. This, of course, means more to those who happen to have planets at 23 degrees, of course, of either this Capricorn energy or the Taurus energy. I happen to have planets or important points in both places. So I'm like, okay, what's happening? What am I supposed to do? And I regularly get downloads that inspire me to do something that I would have thought, why do I need to do this? I don't question anymore. I just get my butt moving and I just do it. So I'm looking for something that I need to get my butt moving and doing unexpectedly as a result of this energy that happens on Sunday, January 12th. And then we're still at this time under that influence of Mars in its, again, supportive conversation with Neptune. Now, this Neptune work is finally starting to wrap up work that started 14 years ago. And as it does so, right, it's doing it hand in hand with the North Node. So again, it's fated work that we need to complete. And Neptune will come back here after it ventures into Aries to do yet again more work. I just cannot stress enough how important it is to pay attention, to journal, to capture the ideas, the information, the conversations, to save the emails, things that you think mean nothing. They mean something if they're coming up for you now. The fleeting thought, I wonder if, write it down. I guarantee you, when these planets shift and change and then come back again, you're going to want to remember what that idea was. What was that concept? Who was I talking to? Who's been on my mind? There's a reason for it, so write it all down. Okay. I keep telling people I'm mostly curious, even though there is a lot of kind of scary energy this year. I'm not going to lie. I'm still mostly curious about how it shifts and changes us. All right. As we get into next week, the thing that will stand out the most is going to immediately be on Monday, January 13th, this full moon in Cancer, conjunct to Mars, and sextile to Uranus, which is trine to the sun. Like, there is some big emotional surprises that are in store for us as a result of the influence of Uranus. And of course, the moon in its home sign, which is extra strong and potent. Add to that Mars, which is like adding the moon on steroids, and Mars is retrograde. Something about the past. It could be a woman. It could be something to do with families. Something to do with the government, right? With government leaders. There is some surprise ending that is coming up for us at the time of this full moon. So the excitement does not end. I just finished working on my first draft of February, and I was like, it took me like a whole day to write it because it's so complex. There is so much that keeps happening. So for everybody who keeps saying to me, when is it going to stop? Not this year, and not even next year. We're just in this era of big changes and shifts. And so we have to show up and we have to move along with the energy. Don't try to stay stuck. This is not the time. You're going to have to get comfortable with change. That's going to be the lesson. And ending those things that we thought always served us, but they don't. And so we have to end them so we can invite new things in. Of course, I'm here to guide you as best I can, and I can only give you generalized information on these videos, lessons, and tutorials, and in my articles. But if you want to know for sure, come work with me. I connect to you energetically. I'm not just looking at an alignment. I literally feel your energy, and it helps me tune in and know where to focus. And then your chart literally tells me a story, and I'm just a transcriber of that story to you. So I love working with people one-on-one so that I can help tell you your story and you can start living life the way it's meant to be lived. All right. Keep me posted. I love your comments. I love your emails. Anybody who works with me knows I am very accessible, even after we're done with the sessions, because I'm invested, right, in you and your success. So if you want a cheerleader in your corner, come work with me. All right. Thanks, everybody. Another week off and running. We will, of course, come together next week and do the breakdown of the full moon by sign. But in the meantime, if you want a preview, go read my article for the full moon in Cancer and get prepared. All right, guys, we will talk again next week. Have a great one. Take care. Be sure and check out your weekly tarot card messages as well. Those, along with this astro lesson, are going to give you the big picture. Thanks again for tuning in. Talk to you next week.